And there's a lot of variability between brands. In YouTube and TikTok videos, some of the Hyaluron pens we investigated appeared to deposit product atop the lips, seemingly too weak to pierce the skin, assuming they were being used properly. Others garnered reviews warning of their intensity and advising shoppers against using them on any area of the face. Hyaluron pen fans may argue that if certain drugs, like epinephrine and insulin, are considered safe for DIY injection, then why not HA? But in those medically acceptable scenarios, Nike explains, you're prescribed the needle, you're prescribed the syringes, you're prescribed the insulin, and then you're given instruction by a medical professional, who is monitoring the process. With HA, the Hyaluron pens are not FDA approved, there's zero oversight, and you're typically targeting the face, which is, due to its vasculature, more dangerous to inject than, say, a thigh or shoulder. What's more, Nike adds, since the people using these pens are unable to legitimately purchase FDA-approved fillers, they're purchasing black market fillers online. Over the past few months, dozens of board-certified dermatologists and plastic surgeons have taken to social media to warn their followers about the myriad risks associated with Hyaluron pens and DIY filler injections. In general, while countless companies make Hyaluron pens, and there appear to be slight differences between models, related primarily to advertised depths of delivery and measurements of pressure and speed, our experts insist that they largely operate by the same mechanical means and pose similar risks. These pens are of concern, and I don't feel that it would be ethical for me to comment that any one of these is necessarily better than another for use by someone who is not medically trained and extremely familiar with facial anatomy, says Sundar, and it's this, the fundamental DIY nature of these devices, that makes them so perilous, the fact that they're being sold to individuals unqualified to perform filler injections and inciting self-treatment, adds Sundaram. A pressurized injection literally has zero place on the face, says Marawala. To minimize complications, like vascular occlusion and ordinary bruising, we always teach physicians to inject with low pressure and slowly. Hyaluron pens, however, rely on high force and velocity to deliver filler into the skin. When a device does not have a needle as a point of entry, the product needs to essentially be propelled with such force and under such high pressure that it can tear or rip through the skin, says Sundar. In the case of lip injections, whenever significant pressure is exerted on the sensitive mucosa, there will be trauma and crush injury to a certain extent, and not limited just to the skin, but to the underlying blood vessels as well, as demonstrated by the bruising in many of these Hyaluron pen how-to videos. The high pressure at which the product is introduced, as a result of injury to the mucosa, could result in long-term scar formation. Sundaram likens Hyaluron pen HA injections to filler bullets and the trauma they produce to the collateral damage inflicted when an actual bullet is fired into human tissue. Common sense tells us if you're pushing a high-speed bullet under extreme air force into the skin, there will be tissue trauma. These pens aren't capable of controlled, predictable treatment, says Sundaram, because the forcing of filler at high pressure into the skin will cause it to spread unpredictably and inconsistently. Moreover, she notes, once the skin starts to swell during treatment, the swelling is going to mask the real shape of the lips. You no longer have any semblance of accuracy in terms of where you're putting this stuff. She recently treated a Hyaluron pen user whose upper lip was much bigger than the lower lip, and then one side of the upper lip was significantly larger than the other, and there was bruising, and it was lumpy, she says. Sundaram also makes the point that pens advertising great depths are capable of reaching certain muscles, like those that move the mouth. Ultrasound scans of the living lip, which are more accurate than cadaver studies, have shown that the orbicularis oris muscle lies about 4 mm below the skin surface, she explains. If a Hyaluron pen deposits filler into that muscle, its mobility could cause increased risk of filler lumps and bumps, and even more distant filler displacement, often incorrectly termed migration, she says. On the flip side, if certain brawny volumizing varieties are injected too shallowly by an unpredictable pen, they too can cause problems, like visible lumps and a bluish hue. Some of the fillers that are being touted for use with these pens are actually thicker, more highly cross-linked types, Sundaram says. If you inject those superficially, you can get Tyndall effect, which is a blue discoloration due to a scattering of light. Beyond the pen's questionable depths and dispersion patterns, the fact that they implant the product as a single bolus, or depot, rather than in a continuously moving linear placement is a concern from both a safety and an aesthetic perspective, Sundar says. An experienced injector never depots product, especially in the lips, Marawala co-signs, saying, I never inject lips using a serial bolus technique. It not only looks unnatural, but the patient will feel the lumps and bumps. Bolus-style injections can also heighten the risk of vascular compromise or tissue injury, notes Sundar. The hazards here spring from two sources, the iffy substances being injected and the Hyaluron pens themselves. As previously noted, perhaps the most concerning of all the issues is the actual filler itself, Sundar says. Beyond potential for contamination or adulteration, I also worry that some laypeople may not understand the nuanced differences between HA intended for topical use like a serum and true hyaluronic acid fillers, which are intended for injection. Introducing a topical product into the skin or mucosa using these pens could cause long-term complications, such as foreign body reactions or granuloma formation, which can be quite challenging to correct. Even if someone somehow manages to procure a pure, legitimate hair filler, getting it into the pen opens another can of worms. They require the transfer of filler from its original syringe to an ampoule within the pen, notes Sundaram. This is a multi-step process. Connect the transferring syringe to a needle, draw up filler, squirt it into the ampoule, and every time it's done, there is a risk of contamination. Sundar adds that even if this maneuver is performed in a medical setting, the transfer would not be sterile. But this being performed in a person's home is a setup for an infection. Then there's the issue of DIY sterilization. Each of these pens has removable parts, and the question is, how clean are the actual devices themselves? Marawala says, the companies are expecting you to inject a material of unknown origin and stability into your skin, with a device that has ridges and parts that are supposed to be cleaned how? With soap and water and dried on the dish rack? Does not seem safe to me. When we asked Simpson if the US FDA was taking steps to remove these devices from the market or to prohibit manufacturers from marketing them for cosmetic use, she replied, as a policy matter, the FDA does not discuss the regulatory status of specific products except with the firms that are responsible for such products. However, to date, no needleless injector has been approved for the injection of hyaluronic acid for aesthetic purposes. It's hard to imagine the Hyaluron pen ever gaining FDA clearance, considering the litany of risks outlined by our medical experts and the current absence of data on the DIY devices. If anyone wanted to legitimize these pens, we'd have to have controlled studies, head-to-head against needle injection, to assess the safety, efficacy, reliability, and short and long-term consequences. Sundaram points out, while optimistically awaiting Hyaluron pen legislation here in the US, though there's an influx of products on the market to combat acne, many of them are much too harsh, and possibly even harmful, for women who are pregnant or nursing. Our skin has the ability to absorb vitamins, minerals, medications, and toxins, says Sekon. This is particularly important in pregnancy, where anything that contacts your skin can act as exposure or influence on your baby. If you prefer to shop over the counter, Del Campo says that anything formulated with less than 10% of glycolic acid is safe. Other common ingredients that diminish acne and are safe for pregnant folks to use include sulfur, bentonite clay, and benzoyl peroxide. Overall, it's best to keep your pregnancy skincare routine pared down with minimal ingredients. I like to focus on clean, simple products for pregnant skin as skin becomes more reactive, more sensitive, and more irritable, says Del Campo. Less is more. Overwhelming the skin with too many products, especially those products that can be drying to the skin, can backfire. We know that's a lot to keep in mind, so to help, we've curated a list of dermatologist-approved skincare products packed with effective, acne-fighting ingredients that are safe to use when pregnant and breastfeeding. Replace salicylic acid altogether with a natural derivative that's equally as effective. Enter black willow bark extract, which is at the heart of True Botanicals' clear nourishing cleanser. Salicylic acid is not safe during pregnancy, but willow bark is, Del Campo says. It has the same anti-inflammatory effects, but does not have a risk of Ray's syndrome. This balancing cleanser gently exfoliates, while the antioxidants from green and white teas protect skin, and helichrysum, an essential oil with anti-inflammatory and antibacterial properties, clears away fungus and soothes irritation.